Déclaration des...
Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Bécancour Nicolet Sorel. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say that it's a great honor for me to call you Mr. Speaker here in this chamber today. It's a title that suits you perfectly. I've seen many faces go through this place, but it's always been a pleasure to recognize yours over the 21 years that you dedicated to the citizens of Ottawa-Vanier. They were able to count on you when the survival of the Montfort Hospital was threatened, and you were still there a decade later when it was expanded rather than closed. They were able to count on you to defend the rights of Francophones, both at home and throughout Canada. And here you are here again today at the heart of the battle to make Ottawa officially bilingual. On behalf of the members of the Bloc Québécois, I salute your indefatigable commitment to your constituents, to Francophones everywhere, and to the noble democratic values that this House should never lose sight of. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian industry is paramount to our Canadian steel industry is paramount to our ability to grow the economy. It directly employs over 20,000 Canadians, and a further 100,000 Canadians have jobs indirectly because of steel. The steel industry supplies essential materials to a variety of important sectors, including the automotive, manufacturing, mining, construction, and energy sectors, and it encourages innovation. That said, Mr. Speaker, Canada's steel industry faces a number of challenges. In my riding, SR Steel, Algoma, and Tenaris Algoma Tubes are in crisis. They have seen substantial layoffs over the past few years, and if the situation does not improve, this could continue. Mr. Speaker, that is why I'm working with this government, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, and many others to elevate the conversation on steel. This government will not leave the Canadian steel industry behind. Mr. Speaker, it's an extreme honor to raise this important issue before you on this day. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Flamborough, Glanbrook.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Flamborough Chamber of Commerce announced the winners of their 2016 Outstanding Business Achievement Awards. These top businesses will be recognized April 1st, and I can tell you they're not fooling. The Flamborough Chamber is a very active organization in our community and is truly a model for supporting the small and medium-sized enterprises that are the backbone of the Canadian economy. While every winner is outstanding in their own right, there will be two special awards given out this year that I would like to highlight. First, the Lifetime Achievement Award will go to Jim Wilkinson of Wilkinson Heavy Precast. Jim is a past president of Flamborough Chamber, and his business has been an innovative local manufacturer for over 60 years. Second, the Town of Flamborough Award goes to Pat McNally for 40 years of service with the Rotary Club of Waterdown. But what's truly amazing is that Pat is 101 years old, an incredible lifetime community of service record. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the members of this House, I extend thanks and congratulations to the Flamborough Chamber and the thriving businesses within the Flamborough community.
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, I want to mark a moment in the history of the City of Lorraine, that is the election last Sunday of a woman mayor for the first time. I congratulate Ms. Lindion. I also note that 2 men and 2 women are currently the mayors of the 4 cities in my riding, which is another first in Thérèse de Blainville. This is an event worthy of mention. This male-female parity during the same week where we are celebrating International Women's Day. This egalitarian representation shows that even though there's still work to be done, there is progress happening naturally without this being surprising to anyone. I'm proud to relate this to the House because in 2016, that is a reality that we want to see happen throughout the country and worldwide. Let us be leaders as you are, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
I rise to pay tribute to a remarkable young woman from Hilton Township on St. Joe's Island, Mackenzie Hume, who was shortlisted for Samara's Everyday Political Citizen Contest. Mackenzie is proof that age doesn't matter, and this 16-year-old Central Algoma Secondary School student has earned every one of her accolades with a string of impressive accomplishments. In the 7th grade, at the age of 12, Mackenzie spent 3 weeks at Queen's Park in the Ontario Legislative Page program. She followed that up by participating in the inaugural year for Ontario's Model Parliament and will be joining us here at Parliament next year as a participant in the Forum for Young Canadians program. Mackenzie is also one of 2 student trustees in the Algoma District School Board. On top of all of this, she still finds the time to volunteer both in her communities and at political events. As her nominator and friend Matthew Manser says, this young lady of just 16 years old is magnificent, an assessment that I concur with wholeheartedly. Congratulations to Mackenzie et félicitations à vous, Monsieur le Président.
And congratulations to you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, last Saturday night in beautiful Whistler, British Columbia, 750 people gathered in awe of the opening of the Audain Art Museum, an architecturally stunning building by renowned Canadian architects John and Patricia Patkow. The Audain Art Museum is the vision, creation, and gift to Canada of Michael Audain and Yoshiko Karasawa. Their collection of Pacific Northwest First Nations art is unparalleled and offers an exceptional insight into the creative and culturally sophisticated minds of the Coast Salish, Gitxsan, Haida, Haisla, Heiltsuk, Pawakaswak, Nishka, Nachalnith, Tlingit, and Chimcham artists of the past, as well as the genius of today's contemporary artists, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. The museum was established for the purpose of bringing the art and life of British Columbia from the earliest times to today for all. Yet another very good reason to visit Whistler. Canadians will be surprised, moved, and you're all invited.
The honourable member for Chilliwack, Hope.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to celebrate the life of a remarkable British Columbian, Raleigh Fox. For 36 years, Raleigh was the behind-the-scenes believer in the mission his son Terry Fox set out on with his Marathon of Hope to raise money for cancer research. In recent years, he took a more public role with the Terry Fox Foundation, visiting local runs across the country and personally signing over 14,000 thank you letters every year. Millions of people around the world will mourn the loss of a man whose never-ceasing optimism inspired his son to set out on a journey that would bring hope to those facing the darkest chapter of their lives. Raleigh will be remembered by those who knew him best for enriching their lives with laughter and for his courage and grace as he faced his life's last challenge. Terry, Betty, and now Raleigh Fox fought the good fight, finished the race, and kept the faith. Let us vow today to pick up the torch they have carried so well for so long.
The honourable member for Niagara Centre.
Mr. Speaker, throughout Canada's history, Parliament has strategically invested in a pan-Canadian transportation system that united this country and grew our economy. In the 1870s, a railway from coast to coast. In the 1940s, a network of airports. By the 1960s, the St. Lawrence Seaway was moving global cargo abroad, thereby completing multimodal networks throughout our nation. With the tabling of the Transportation Act review, the stage is set for economically strategic, sustainable federal infrastructure investments. This Parliament is now in a position to establish a national transportation strategy to drive the next generation of transportation infrastructure investments that will strengthen our multimodal networks and grow our nation's economy. To quote David Emerson, a recurring theme in the report is the inseparable relationship between Canada's international trade performance and the quality of the transportation and logistics systems across this nation.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Minister of Natural Resources spoke at the Prospectors and Developers Convention. Mining contributes $57 billion to our GDP, but it's struggling in a long downturn. He acknowledged uncertainty is bad for the business, but the government's transitional regulatory approach creates instability, deters investment, and causes job losses. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister was minutes away naming 2 pandas and didn't stop in to the largest mining meeting in the world. I guess the PM figured pandas don't ask tough questions or need real answers. Tomorrow he's rubbing elbows at the Centre for American Progress that calls Canadian energy dirty business. LNG projects are at risk. There's no deal on softwood lumber. Now, we know making priorities is hard, and maybe they're just not ready yet, but it's a bad pattern. Canadians will start to have some joy when the Liberals give them hope that they have a real plan for the hundreds of thousands of workers whose jobs are on the line in our world-leading natural resources sector.
The Honourable Member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, today it's a great honour to take the floor.
Will be held as the names of close to 800 people who have died on city streets is read aloud and projected onto the side of a church that is just literally a heartbeat away from Toronto City Hall. Reviewing the names in the list is a painful and a tragic loss that we all have to recognize. Too many of these names are on other lists that are just as shameful. The list of missing and murdered Indigenous women, the list of residential school survivors, the list of close to 97,000 households in Toronto that are waiting for affordable housing. None of these are lists that any person should be on. Housing can no longer be seen as a problem that needs to be solved. Housing is the solution to so many of the challenges we face in this country. As the names are read aloud tonight in Toronto, let us stand here united as a parliament and as a country to make sure that these lists stop growing. Let us do it by building safe, affordable, and most importantly, supportive housing in Canada. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honour the Portuguese community in my downtown riding of Davenport. They are the largest ethnic group, representing approximately 30% of my riding.
Alive and well in Davenport. Last month I had the honour of attending anniversary celebrations of 2 community organizations that exist to celebrate the distinct traditions in the Portuguese provinces of Beras and Alentejo. On February 13, Casa das Beras hosted their 16th anniversary of their club, and on February 20th, Casa de Alentejo celebrated their 30th anniversary. My congratulations and deep gratitude goes out to the leadership of these clubs, particularly Presidents Bernardino Nascimento and Carlos Souza. These 2 ethnic clubs, along with Casa de Madeira, Casa dos Azores, Peniche, and Arsenal de Minho, have done tremendous work in Davenport, celebrating and promoting the cultural and social activities of the Portuguese community.
Their efforts ensure that Portuguese traditions are passed down to the next generations. This is one of Canada's greatest success stories.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South, Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to address the House for the first time. I want to thank my constituents in the new riding of Kitchener South Hespeler for placing the trust in me. Service to my constituency will always be my first priority. I also rise today to recognize the significant contributions of Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada to my constituency and the region. This year, Toyota will celebrate 30 years in my riding. Toyota employs 8,000 people in Cambridge and nearby Woodstock. Within the next couple of months, Toyota Canada will have produced 7 million vehicles. The multiplier effect in the auto parts industry and local businesses is enormous. Toyota is a responsible corporate citizen, participates in the community, and supports worthy local causes. For my riding of Kitchener South Hespeler, I cannot stress enough the importance of the automobile industry and Toyota in particular. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, if the Liberals want to make a fundamental change to our voting system, the process must not be dominated by one political party's interest. A committee comprised of a select number of MPs is not, and never will be a substitute for all Canadians having their voices heard. The Liberals have no legitimate case to claim that their House of Commons majority, delivered through a system that they claim is no longer valid, gives them a mandate to change our voting system. As the Member of Parliament for Haldimand and Norfolk, I will continue to stand up against this unilateral stance taken by the Liberal Party to deny Canadians a referendum on how they elect their MPs. Mr. Speaker, the fact is that when you change the basic rules of democracy, everyone has to have a say. Otherwise, it's no longer democracy.
Here. Right on.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate and thank before this House the citizens of Châteauguay-Lacolle, notably Jean-François Lavallée, founder of the Refugee Welcoming Committee of Greater Châteauguay, and Annick Sauvé, president of Entraide Mercier, who established an initiative to sponsor a Syrian family, the first in our community. The process begun last fall was effective because the Aldas family, made up of 3 children and another on the way, arrived in Canada February 18th. The refugees recently settled in their own house in Châteauguay. This is the first experience in Greater Châteauguay, but given the reception by the population, it won't be the last. I also wish to underscore the implication of Claudette Lévesque, Catherine Hooper, and Father Clément Lafitte, and all the donors in this great project.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week on March 4th, the community of Powell River and Tliamin First Nation celebrated an elder named Dr. Elsie Paul. A deeply respected elder, members of both Tliamin and Powell River joined in the spirit of reconciliation to recognize the work and commitment Elsie has shown to building a stronger community, both within her nation and in the communities surrounding it. Raised by her grandparents, Elsie had limited interaction with residential school. This allowed her to be raised in her culture, to be fluent in her mother tongue, and to learn from the rich environment around her. Elsie is a beacon of traditional knowledge, feeding the roots of her people and seeing them flourish with her efforts. This leadership only grew across Canada and the world when she published a book on her life called Written as I Remember It. I want to thank Elsie for being who she is, for holding the culture safe to pass on to another generation, and for being the graceful woman that she is.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to see you in the chair, my friend. As you know, Mr. Speaker, I've always tried to be as sweet in this House of Commons as you have. But today I'm extra sweet because I'm talking about the Purple Woods Maple Syrup Festival in the Durham region, Mr. Speaker. Starting this Saturday and running through April, the most family-friendly event in our area is running, where you can go on trail rides, horse rides, see the Pioneer Village, and your children can watch sap transformed into maple syrup. I'd like to congratulate the Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority for this 41st festival, and the fun continues to May 7th in historic Bowmanville for Maple Fest, where we continue to celebrate our local maple syrup industry and farms like Trails End in Bowmanville and Ashton's in Port Perry. So I invite all members of this House, I invite you, Mr. Speaker, and all Canadians to the Purple Woods Maple Syrup Festival, to Maple Fest in the Durham region, and if you come on March 14th, I'll flip you a pancake myself.
The Honourable Member for Hull-Aylmer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In cooperation with my colleague, the member for Haliburton-Kawartha Lakes Brock, I rise to challenge all our colleagues in the House of Commons. As we all know, we have a very heavy work schedule here. Being a politician and being in good shape is not always easy. That's why we associated with the Tamarack Ottawa race weekend. So we're asking all members to participate in one of the 6 races that will take place on May 28th and 29th. By participating, you will draw attention to the important issues of health and physical activity. I wish to underscore that this race will be a fundraiser for the Gehrig Association of Canada. I encourage as many MPs as possible to take part. Join us twice a week in order to train. Together, we can make a difference and at the same time support our colleague and friend, the member for Ottawa-Vanier.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, let me start off by saying that you look great up there. Remark that you've achieved in a very short period of time what many speakers dream of, which is a well-behaved chamber. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, I took the ice bucket challenge like many of my colleagues in this House, and I still remember having that big ice bucket dumped on my head when I was health minister, and combined with government funding, that amazing challenge raised $20 million for research funding and $6 million for support programs, but we can do more. So I'm asking the Prime Minister today to join me in asking Canadians from coast to coast to coast to support organizations that are fighting ALS and to find a cure for ALS.
Mr. Speaker, it's a tremendous pleasure to see you there today. I thank my honourable colleague for her question and for her leadership, both as an individual and as a former health minister on this. And I salute you as honourable member for Ottawa-Vanier and Speaker for the dignity and grace that you bring to the House every day as you battle this terrible disease. Like many of us in this House, I was pleased to take part in a number of ice bucket challenges, both as dumpee and dumper, and I was pleased to do my part to help raise money and research and awareness for ALS. Canadians pride themselves on looking out for one another, and I join the Leader of the Opposition in urging everyone to give your time and financial support to organizations that are working so hard to find a cure for this terrible disease.
Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
L'honorable député d'Outremont.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and allow me to tell you on behalf of all of my colleagues how pleased we are to see you in the chair occupying those duties today.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, Last week, the member for Ottawa-Vanier was congratulated for work supported to the Francophone community in Ottawa. The NDP shares your conviction. We must celebrate and protect our official languages across the country. Almost 1 out of every 4 Francophones lives outside Quebec. We need to do more to ensure that all Canadians have access to service in the language of their choice, regardless of where they live. What does the Prime Minister intend to do to continue to follow up on the exceptional contribution made by the Honourable Member for Ottawa-Vanier in order to improve services and support minority language communities in Canada?
Le très honorable
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for his question and point out that no one in this House has done more to support the Francophones in Ottawa and across Canada as you, as the Honourable Member for Ottawa-Vanier. Since your election in 1995, you have fought a tireless battle for linguistic duality in Canada, national unity, and a fair society for all. We are going to continue to support your incredible work, namely with a new official languages plan that will support both Anglophone and Francophone linguistic minorities across the country. This House, linguistic minorities, and all Canadians, thank you for your service.
J'aimerais maintenant vous remercier tous.
I would like to thank you all, colleagues, for the exceptional privilege that you have given me to serve as the Honourary Speaker of the House of Commons today. Thank you.
I would like to thank you all, dear colleagues of this House, for the great privilege you have bestowed upon me to serve as Honorary Speaker of the House of Commons today. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you all, dear colleagues of this House, for the great privilege you have bestowed upon me to serve as Honorary Speaker of the House of Commons today. Thank you very much.